This week on the High Ground podcast, Element 7, Shaylo Ren, MaceAhWindu, and I dive deep into lore. We're talking all about the World Between Worlds and the Mortis trilogy arc right here on the High Ground podcast. Anyways, hello. Thank you everyone for joining me here on the High Ground podcast. I'm super excited. I feel like this one was a long time coming because so much good and amazing lore that happens in Clone Wars and Rebels. Plus, I get to be here with my dogs, my my favorite content creators. So this is it's a dream come true for me. I feel like everyone here knows all of us. So why don't we just, go around, introduce yourself, and who's your favorite character and why? And we'll start with Pep.
I'm Element 7. You've seen me on this show before, so I don't have to go through the whole rigmarole. My favorite character, well, I have like 3 different favorite characters. If you include Legends continuity, it's Satele Shan. Battle Meditation, her role in the Civil War, the Cold War, and just how major expectation was thrust upon her in the same way that Anakin and Luke had expectation thrust upon them because of their legacy and their lineage. And then on the canon side of things, it is Yoda or Luke Skywalker. It shuffles here and there. When Yoda's spouting off his wisdom, it just like goes whew. And then when Luke in TLJ, when I watch that every so often, he shoots back up. So yeah, those 3.
All right, beautiful. And MaceAhWindu, Josh.
Hi everybody. Just like Element 7, I've been here about 2 times before, so I don't really have to go through all the bells and whistles. But my favorite character for a long time has been Luke Skywalker. Mine also kind of fluctuates depending on the days. I'm a big fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi as well. But yeah, it's mainly been Luke pretty much the entire time. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Thank you for having me on again.
Oh, always a pleasure. Yeah, especially last one you were on was for A New Hope, and that one is kind of in the middle of my lists because it's like the foundation with which everything stems from. Mm-hmm. But man, that podcast was awesome. We had a lot of really cool stuff brought up. And then last but definitely not least, we have my girl Shaylee.
Hello. You may know me as Shaylo Ren. My favorite character would be Ahsoka, partially because of what we're going to talk about today. I feel like there's a lot of cool depth and lore around her character, especially after Rebels. And I really like her character development, and it inspires me personally. So it would be Ahsoka. I hope that's not too basic of a choice because everybody loves Ahsoka.
Hey, man, there's nothing wrong with the classics. You know what I mean? That's why.
There's a reason people love her so much. She's good.
And then for me, huge Obi-Wan Kenobi fan. Of course, my favorite Jedi is Plo Koon because I have a weird love for him that makes no rightful sense. I just love Plo Koon so much, and I feel like he's like the space dad that we all deserve. The way that he looks after Ahsoka is like wonderful. And yeah. So I love Plo Koon, but Obi-Wan and
little choco.
and I'm a huge Thrawn fan as well. Though if we throw some Legends continuity in there, then Jaina Solo is my girl. Sword of the Jedi, she's a beast. But all right, so we're talking about some deep lore stuff, and I apologize that my notes weren't great, but it was so hard to write notes for this topic because we can go anywhere with it. So I want us to start with the Mortis trilogy and just kind of dive in there and I want to start by getting you guys' overall impressions for it. I know we're all kind of big lore fans. So yeah, the entire thing in a nutshell, and we'll go to Josh first.
All right. So the funny thing about this whole thing is originally, I didn't like it. when I watched it, when did this come out? What was it, season 3 of the Clone Wars? Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of it. I wanted like the clones. I wanted like the open action battles. It wasn't until I eventually went back and rewatched the series that I went back and found a newfound appreciation for it. And it wasn't until I had seen Rebels and all this other stuff where I was like, oh, that's why yes, this is good. So in retrospect, it's become a lot higher on my list of Clone Wars moments, and it's become a very big moment. I'm sure we're going to talk about today regarding like Star Wars lore in general, and at least in canon. So yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of it. I like watching it now.
I have to say I'm in the same camp. Like when I first saw it, like watching Clone Wars Weekly, I had no idea what was happening. I was like, all right, can I get to Rex again? I want to see guns and stuff. How about you, Shaylee?
I kind of didn't like it the first time either, but I also think that was just a lack of, I don't know. Rebels gave me a new appreciation for a lot of things, and so did The Last Jedi. I think both of those movies, that movie and that show brought a lot of appreciation for like Force lore for me. So then I go back and watch it, and I watched it again today, and I still really, really, really enjoy it. It's a lot to grasp. Like there's a lot, and like I was listening to like a podcast where they had Dave Filoni on it, because I was like, well, what has Dave Filoni said about this? And he said he's talking about how he leaves it like that on purpose. Like he likes that we speculate, and like it's very mysterious. So the fact that I can't really grasp it, that makes me feel better, because Dave did it on purpose. So,
Yeah,
it's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah, he says that in the featurette from the DVD, which I definitely revisited, but no, you don't get very much information about it here. And how about you, Element?
Short non sequitur. First, your intro should have sound in the final recording. It just doesn't play back on the OBS. So, impressions of the Mortise Arc. I'm the complete opposite from Josh and Shaylee. As soon as I saw it, I was like, finally, because as they wanted more clones and action, or weren't expecting this type of angle from Clone Wars. We had gotten all of that previous to this, and then finally we were diving deep into the lore, and you know, we started with the father and the daughter and the son, and just having, you know, incarnations of the light, dark, and balance had huge implications for me going into it. So my interests were piqued, my attention was 150% there. And I appreciated that they actually visited this subject matter in the Clone Wars, because like a lot of fans who are watching this, they're just expecting the Clone Wars, like what's happening with Rex and the clones and the Jedi, and, you know, the fighting with the Separatists and stuff like that. And so this was a nice kind of breath of fresh air in the middle of that big event where things are just mad confusing when you start watching it. But like once you start paying attention and I guess taking it all in, it just has huge implications for the larger Star Wars universe that did not exist before the Clone Wars was there.
Yeah, and I love because they go back to, you know, Dave Filoni whenever it's dealing with strictly Force stuff, goes back to the source, goes and talks to George, talks about a lot of this they were pulling out of these, you know, old notebooks that he had, and yeah, it's really exciting. So all right, let's go and jump into it. The first thing we find out is that there was this signal that was 2,000-year-old Jedi signal, and you know, actually, let's start with the people, the Father, the Son, and the daughter. Let's break them down, and then we'll get into each episode and like see how it all plays out. So let's start with the daughter. I feel like she has the simpler of the stories. So let's talk daughter first. And I started with Josh last time, I believe. So Shaylee?
One thing that I really enjoy about or noticed when I was rewatching the Mortise Arc today, when we talk about like balance in the Force, and all this time, like we go over it and over it, and we're like, you can't have light and dark, like, and no consequences. And like being light means that you go with the Force, like the will of the Force. And when I was watching it today, I noticed that she really embodies that aspect of the light side of the Force, where you're not trying to bend it to your own will. She goes along with whatever the Father's like plan is a lot, and and it's a really good contrast to the Son, who's trying to bend that to his will. And that's like exactly what we talk about all the time when we're like, there's a difference between using the light side and using the dark side, and like the reason that the Jedi failed is because they tried to bend the light side to their will and like all this stuff. So I noticed that today about the daughter, that she's very much like goes with what the Father wants. And I think that is sort of how the light side works. Like you just kind of go with the Force, don't use it for your own plans.
Yeah, I mean,
that was the thing I took away from her today.
I agree completely. You know, we something I commonly hear is like, oh, we getting rid of, you know, Jedi and Sith is balance, but again, just the light side in and of itself isn't what causes the imbalance. Element, your thoughts on the daughter?
She's the model definition of what light side would be. As Shaylee said, you know, she is just laissez-faire, going with the flow, not really caring about, her own kind of gains or goals, in contrast to the Son. And as you just mentioned, this whole misconception about balance in the Force with you know, the number of Jedi and number of Sith, or how powerful the light side is versus how powerful the dark side is. And while we'll get to the Son and the Father afterwards, the daughter is just like the preeminent example of what the light side is. And once you see this in the Clone Wars, it should inform you as to how balance is going to go throughout the entire galaxy and the rest of the story. You know, it's a tragic story with the daughter, because, you know, she shares just as much love and familial connection with the other two, but, you know, she has a role to play, so to speak. And so her role was just to kind of be there and let things happen. And then she's obviously tested by, you know, external forces and Anakin and them. But ultimately, you know, the will of the Force rode out. It kind of played out with the daughter in a way that you didn't expect when you first saw this, because you thought the light side was going to be kind of victorious or whatever. But, you know, sometimes it ends in tragedy. Sometimes it ends in a way that doesn't typically on the outset look like a good thing. But, you know, if you kind of take a step back and get meta all of a sudden, then you realize, well, all of these chain of events has a purpose, and it's going to fulfill something in the future, or however long down the line, then, you know, it all makes sense afterwards. So the daughter kind of just served her purpose and enabled the will of the Force to flow.
Okay, nice. I like it. And,
you guys both blew that answer out of the water. I don't know how I'm supposed to.
It's not
I thought the daughter was cool. Yeah. But no, seriously. But in all seriousness, no, the daughter. really the entire arc, but the daughter specifically, this embodiment of light, kind of, I want to say like she is what, and this is my personal opinion, I don't know if there's any like intention behind this concept of her character, but I always felt like when I watched her, I always felt that she was supposed to be kind of like the penultimate form of what maybe the Jedi should have been. Like, that's how I always looked at it when I first started like really getting into the arc. And I was like, oh, okay. Like how she understands things, how she goes about her life, how the decisions that she makes. That's kind of what we expect the perfect Jedi to be like. So that was the biggest comparison I made. And like, and it was kind of on the nose, but not in a bad way. Like when we see the father, we see the son, and then we see the daughter, like the son is like the dark side. And you're like, okay, this is total dark side, like Sith Lord type stuff. And we see the daughter, and it's like, oh, like it's pretty cool. So yeah, short and sweet.
No, I like it. Nothing wrong with that. All right, so we talked about the daughter. Let's talk about the son. And start with Shaylee. So, Element, you're up first.
Oh, the son. He is. Of course, he's representing the dark side, right? But there's a distinction that we have to make when, talking about the son, because he's not Sith, right? And the Sith represent the very worst of the dark side. Should you choose to kind of bathe in the dark side and try to draw from its font of power constantly, as Momin said, it's going to. It hungers, and you're going to have to constantly feed the dark side and give more and more of yourself to it. So at the outset, the sun represents just, the basest form of the dark side. And throughout the arc, we keep on hearing the father say, you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have fallen so far. And it's kind of revelatory in a way where you can be dark side, or a representation of the dark side, but giving into it and giving into its temptations and just falling deeper and deeper into that place will ultimately make you a servant to it. So you're no longer serving the dark side or representing it. You are the dark side's pawn. And I thought the son's journey throughout this whole arc symbolized that rather well when he started off as like, I'm not a Sith, but he was still kind of edgy, but at the very end, like, and we'll get there, I guess, but at the very end, when he showed kind of that remorse almost and like the dark side emotions, but not the inherent evil of the Sith, where he kind of regretted his actions. That is typically what would be, attributed to a dark side person. But he totally fell for the ways of the Sith and started bending the Force and acting selfishly. And there's a lot I want to talk about with the son, but I'll end my initial assessment there.
Yeah, I mean, and because we are going to get a lot deeper as we start talking about the actual story elements. So we're hitting overviews, but I love how my buddy Isaac, who's in the chat today, love you, man. I've known Isaac for it's been a long time. Sorry, anyways.
Reminiscing.
But the daughter being selflessness, the son being selfishness, and the father being balance. But we'll get there. How about you, Mace? Thoughts on the son?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, he's kind of like a not quite Sith, because he's not a Sith, but it's kind of like raw dark side, kind of like a unrefined dark side, if you will, where it's like he's fresh out of the oven. You haven't done anything to him. It's just what it is. He is representing what the dark side is without any kind of, I guess, like if a Sith Lord was looking at it, they'd be like, oh, this is we can refine this into the Sith, but it's like, no, this is the dark side. No, I mean, he's a very interesting character. He was voiced by the ever so talented Sam Witwer. Excellent job that he did. Very interesting element. I really like what you said about how, like, the distinctions he made from this. It's almost like, and I'm sure we'll get to this more in depth later, but I think I have a semblance of an idea of where you may be going with this. I don't want to assume anything. I think I'll end it there actually too, because I kind of want to wait and see what you say. I think I know what you're going to say. I'll end it there. Yeah, he's really cool.
Yeah.
Very, very complex character, very interesting character. And I'm curious to see where this conversation goes regarding him.
I mean, he's so edgy, he probably has a purple lightsaber.
Yeah, probably. I don't have red like the other ones. Oh, my God. I'm a gray jet.
Illegal here.
Needs a coif that hides one eye.
Oh, my God. Nobody understands me.
Yeah, your thoughts, Shaylee?
Well, my takeaways from him to, like, watching it again today were very similar to what Element said, but he kind of shows. It makes me think of how we learned in The Last Jedi, how it's like light and dark both exist, but there's a difference between like not like knowing it, like accepting it, or actually giving into it and using it. So like he said, like he's a very good example of how, like, at the very beginning, he's not inherently just his, like, he doesn't exist just to be a problem. You know, like the problem comes when he caves into that darkness and starts to try to use it, and it starts to consume him. And it's like a good personification of how is that, I guess that's the right word, of how we know the Force works and how the dark side works. And yeah, and it's really interesting how, like, the problems come. He's like, you know, the opposite of the daughter. She goes very much with what the father, his will is, or what he thinks is best. But he's the son is very much like, I'm going to take control of the situation. I'm going to get what I want out of this. We're doing this my way, like all this stuff. So he's a good example of what the problem with the dark side is, not the existence of it, but like when you use it like that or cave into it like that. So very cool character, especially after watching The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I agree, because Luke's explanation of the Force in that movie is really refreshing and unique. You know what I mean? It's not something that we got, but of course he had a further understanding. But yeah, I loved how you put it, Josh, how, you know, he's not refined yet. Like you gotta put him in a centrifuge and like get rid of that. you know, separate.
Put him in a sieve.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so is it just me, or is Sam Witwer just the dark side? I feel like he.
Man.
I mean, he does Palpatine, he does Starkiller, he does Maul, he does he is just the dark side, you know.
And he's such a nice guy. That's the best part about it. It's like, I only play like the darkest characters, the most evil characters. I'm also one of the sweetest guys in real life. It's like
slightly gatekeepy, you know, once upon a time, but you know, respect his work.
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah, he was.
Really?
But that's okay, you know, especially because we don't know. I mean, we see that clip replayed often. We don't know where he stands. We don't know if that was a one time. Like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of possibilities in the air. And
I've never seen.
Let me clarify. What he said was gatekeepy, like a singe of it.
Yeah. But yeah, and oh man, Matt Lanter's performance in this. I mean, all the characters did a really good job, but those two really, really stuck out to me. I gotta say though, after having just rewatched season 7, the animation was a little jarring to go back to season 3.
Just a little.
Yeah.
And to think that season 3 was like a massive jump from season 1 and like early
blow
season.
up.
You're like, oh my god, like it's like they literally like, hey,
you guys
but it's
remember
2009, so you're like, hey man, take what you get, you know.
You remember the show Reboot?
Oh god.
Wow. That's a deep cut right there.
I mean,
Jeez,
that's
man.
I got those vibes. But okay, all right. So now we got Daddy. We got the father, and we're coming to you first, Josh, on your thoughts on the father.
Sounds good. So like the father, I remember like I had to correct a buddy of mine when we were watching it together. We actually watched this episode in this arc in college with my college buddies. They were keep catching up with the Clone Wars, and I was the guy that was like, every 5 seconds I was looking over at them to see how they'd react. I'm like, oh, you guys get it? And they're like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. But anyway, and my friend was like, oh, he's kind of like a guy in the middle. I'm like, yeah, like kind of like, yeah. And they were like, well, what is he then? And I was like, think of it as like a kind of like he gets it. Like put it that way. Like he's not necessarily like, oh, I'm neither good nor bad, but it's more like I get it. Like I understand what this whole thing is. And so when I see like, and like that was like an important distinction because I felt like at first glance you look at his kids, it's like, oh, the daughter is the good one and the son is the bad one, so he must be in the middle. And it's like it's a little more nuanced than that. Like it's a little bit more of a deeper understanding of everything rather than I use both the light and the dark side of the force. So I always thought that was a really cool thing. Like he very much understood that like the dark side was a thing. It's not some big scary boogeyman per se, but it's something that you need to understand and recognize as what it is, while still saying like, hey, dude, like the light side is pretty much the way to go, but like don't like you need to have a deeper understanding. So I thought he was a really cool character. And when he talks to Anakin, and I don't know if we're going like play by play of the episode, so I don't want to get ahead of you, but like when he talks to Anakin about like Anakin's like the chosen one's a myth, and he's like, oh, is it? It's like it's that was a really cool scene where he talks to him about that kind of stuff, because it's like the audience knows like, oh yeah, you're the chosen one, but like he has no idea. And so for the father to be looking at him like this and speaking to him like this, it was really cool, like to have this like larger than life figure speak to him and have this weight behind the words that he's saying. So he was a really cool character.
Yeah, I agree. And having him as the father was perfect, because it's like your dad, you know, when you're like, you don't understand, and he's like,
yeah, pretty much.
God damn it, like I do. You just need to stop it. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Small thought. Do you think the father was once the son?
Well,
In like 25,000 years BBY, he was the son at that point, and then, you know, generations passed.
my theory is that the father is the former chosen one. And that
I've read about that theory today.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like a 2,000-year-old beacon that they follow up on. Maybe he was a former one. He was one of the Jedi 2,000 years ago, and you know, this place is in between time. It's I mean, we'll get more to it. I'm just giving you a preview of how I'm thinking about it. But to him, yeah, this is the beacon I used, and being the chosen one manifests the daughter and the son when you take your role, and that's why his life is linked to their power. That's just kind of how I was seeing it, but could be very well wrong. But also, I don't want to take
Solid
over.
theory, though.
I gotta hear Shaylee's thoughts on Granddaddy Force.
I kind of subscribe to that theory too, because you can tell that there's like obviously they're connected to him in a different way than they're connected to each other, if that makes sense. So, and I kept trying to like understand, like, are they visions? Are they beings? But then Dave Filoni said they're actual beings. But anyway, so that's kind of how I interpreted it, or I'm currently absorbing it too, is that they're kind of the manifestations from him, and that's why they're linked like that. But anyways, my takeaway today also is he's a good, like Joshua said, like, he's not in the middle. I feel like if they were gonna make him somebody who's between the light and dark, they would have made him like a in between the two characters, but he's like a father. Like, that's a separate role. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that if he were in the middle, he would have been like a mix of the two, but he's like his own thing. And I think that that's a very important distinction, kind of like the Bindu. He's in the middle, but he's not a mix of light and dark. The father, like, kind of overall like has an overarching understanding of everything, but he's not in the middle. He's his own thing. And there's like a clear, the familial relationships they chose, like father and kids, like shows that they're super different. So I really like the imagery they chose, or like the metaphor they chose. I don't know, like the family. I think it, again, like I've said twice now, shows it's a good personification of how the Force works.
Yeah, I love that because he's not the middle child in between these two kids. He's the parent, just like the example I keep saying is that in between hot and cold is not both hot and cold.
Yep.
It's its own thing.
All right, and Pep.
So there was a reason I referred to him in the beginning of this episode as balance, because I feel like, you know, that term needs to make its own kind of place in this whole lore mythology, because you have the light and dark and balance, but balance doesn't mean both sides, right? He's kind of like the custodian there. And the flow of the Force, whether it chooses to go dark or light, is all dependent on what he does to manage it. So he's not in the middle of it. He's an external factor that seeks to kind of control the valves that the valves and the pipes in Mortis, that is just in charge of the flow of the Force in a way that he's determining how much of the will is served for either side. So, like, just like Shaylee said, he's not in the middle of the two. He is his own space, and he's his own role to play in managing the two, and that's why he needs someone to take his place, because he's not embodying any type of place in the cosmic force. He is a custodian of it, and Anakin needs to replace him, and they all, the father or the daughter and the son, both need that separate entity to manage over them and to have that kind of that overarching power over them, so that things remain in balance. And that was his job. That was his role.
Yeah. I like it, man. I'm already loving this episode. Oh, okay. All right. So let's jump into the actual episodes. I mean, we're not doing a play-by-play recap, but I do just want to hit them all really quickly. So then, once we hit all 3 episodes, we can go into our own, personal theories and what we think everything represents, and can spend the bulk of our time there. But as we got started into this, we had overlords, right? And of course, I always pay attention to, the words that pop up on the screen. And this one, it said, balance is found in the one who faces his guilt.
Yes.
And so we had them, finding the the mission, going out and being in the same place with the other people from the Republic, but not seeing them, and it starts this whole journey. I just rewatched all of it today, so it's starting to blend together. But I believe this episode ends with the test that was given. But yeah, I mean, your guys' thoughts. Let's jump into the first episode, and we'll go to Josh first.
I'm sorry. Can you ask that question again? Holy hell. I was like, oh my gosh. I'm looking at my notes and I was like, huh? Can you ask the question again?
No,
I was like, why did he say my name? Oh God, I'm up. Oh God, I'm so sorry.
No, just the first
That's my
episode, which was titled Overlords, right? It's and the message that they gave in the beginning is balance is found in the one who faces his guilt. I just want to get your overall, quick thoughts on this episode. Does this title play in, and how does it play in? And yeah, just going over it real quick.
This is the one that Liam Neeson guest starred in, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Qui-Gon Jinn made like a vision to. Okay, yeah, it's one of my favorites. Yeah, I love that one. I love how they bring him back for all. Anyway, but
I love how Liam Neeson is like, can I come back? You're like,
right? He's like, I'd be happy to do it. Like, no, seriously.
We didn't even ask him. We were trying
you
to.
You guys can age me down. We can do like young Qui-Gon movie. It's fine. No, but no. So this one and the last one were my favorites. The second one I kind of had to go back and watch in order to get I'll be honest with you, I don't really remember what happened in the second one that much, so I had to go back and be like, oh, that's okay. But no, the first one's. So this is the reason why I wasn't initially like hooked on this arc. I had to eventually go back 2 or 3 years later and watch it again. So when they were like, oh, a distress beacon, it's 2,000 years old. And I was like, okay. And they show up and it's like, oh, it's like between time. I was like, oh, we're doing one of these. Like, I immediately went into like everyday fan, casual fan, where you're like, oh God, like I want like action. We're going to do this lore stuff where they're like, oh, wow, like the Force lives all around us. And I just rolled my eyes. Going back and looking at it again, it's actually a really interesting episode. So to see, like,
if you're not prepared to kick your brain up to,
right,
you're like, I was watching at 30%. I gotta go 90. Come on, like,
right? Like I had to really get deep into my understanding of what Star Wars was up to that point. And so when I went back and watched it again, some of the stuff started making sense. And particularly when I went and watched Rebels, I went back and watched it again. And I was like, okay, this has more significance to me. The things that they're saying, the dynamics that we see. Still not my favorite arc, but what it does for the lore of Star Wars, absolutely. And I think this is one of my favorites out of the three. So yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah, definitely. And I like how all three characters had their brief little visions, and how was almost like do you guys think that was Qui-Gon, or was that an inner manifestation of what do you think, Josh?
I have a theory. So like, you know how like Qui-Gon was saying like, hey, I was trying to like figure out how to become a Force ghost, but like then I died, and so like I never really completed that training. My theory is that in that particular vacuum, the Force is so strong and so like sensitive and so like, what's the word? It's strong. I'm just gonna go with strong. That one place is where he's actually able to manifest himself and talk and commune with people. So like when we see him there, I think Dave Filoni, when he did this episode and when he did this arc, I think he was kind of like trying to get the audience to kind of like wonder openly, like, is this actually happening? Or is this like one of those things where like they look back and go, I wonder if that actually happened, and we'll never actually know, but it's one of those things. And in reality, all of the stuff that they're seeing is actually there. So that's my theory, that Qui-Gon is actually able to manifest himself in that one particular area because it's so strong and sensitive with the Force. And so when he's talking to Obi-Wan, he's actually talking to Obi-Wan. And in that particular theory, it makes me feel a little bit better because it's like, oh, like Qui-Gon gets to talk to Obi-Wan like after he dies, and it's not like a sad thing. It's like, hey, chosen one, I was right? It's like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
And okay, so on that, there's something I've got to send to you.
Sure.
From a certain point of view, it is Force Ghost Qui-Gon talking to Obi-Wan on Tatooine right before he goes to meet Luke.
Oh, I need
and
that.
It's written by Claudia Gray, and it's woo spicy.
This is the A New Hope one, right?
Yes.
Okay, I know there's an Empire Strikes Back one too, and I get those two mixed up.
Overall,
awesome.
It's not a great book, but
I heard.
Elements of it are just stellar. Shaylee, Overlords.
I have a few things I want to bring up, but I'll try to hit them quick. So the planet's shape, I know you had that in your notes. Can I talk about that right now, or are we going to talk about that later?
Yeah, no, we can talk about it right now.
Isn't that the same shape as like the monolith that in Legends summoned the Jedi, or like summoned the Force sensitive people for the first time? Do I remember that correctly? Okay, that feels significant. I just wanted to make sure that I was remembering that correctly. So that struck me because it definitely feels like an origin point of something important. I don't know how much of that is canon, how much of it is Legends at this point, but
you're right.
Stuck out to me.
I'm looking at a picture of it. Oh my God! Yeah.
So that stuck out to me.
I think that's in Dawn of the Jedi, but I think that's all Legends.
Yeah.
It's a good
Dawn
connection.
of the Jedi. That's pretty cool. Wow.
It's probably because that planet kind of feels like an origin point of something important to do with the Force. So I feel like that maybe Dave kind of, he likes to tie in Legends a lot. So I feel like that may be doing that because I remember that. Anyway, so that was one point I was going to bring up, and I just wanted to make sure that I was remembering correctly. I think that's pretty neat. What else about this episode? This is... So, I don't know if anybody else thought this too, and we'll get more into the World Between Worlds later, but, the test part when Anakin is doing his little taking down the daughter and son, the imagery really resembled the World Between Worlds a lot. And I did not notice that until today. I was like, that looks very similar. And also, this is such a... I don't know if this has any. This is so minute and probably not important, but at 20 minutes and 10 seconds, when Anakin forces them down on their knees, you can hear one Vader breath. You can hear him breathe as Darth Vader one time.
Really? Wow.
At 20 minutes and 10 seconds. I don't know. That's probably just foreshadowing. He was being angry. He was using his anger, something. I don't know what the significance of it was or if I'm overthinking it, but I was like, wait a second. And I rewound it. And then I was like, that's a Vader breath right as he puts them down on their knees. So I don't know if y'all know, maybe y'all have some insight on that, but maybe it's just symbolic of Anakin's future, blah, 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 but I mean, I don't know if anybody else.
This entire arc is one big fat foreshadowing for ever. It's but yeah, I agree. I guess if I listen closely, I probably could hear the Vader breath, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was thrown in there at all. Especially
because I was like, what? Why right there?
Especially considering he has a little vision and he's like no, and you literally see the cloudy Darth Vader helmet. You're like, oh my God, and it's wow.
Yeah, that was very on the nose, that part.
It was cool.
But oh man, the imagery though with the sky changing and then the camera goes up, and yes, they're on little circles you see them in the World Between Worlds. The several times that you see Ezra, and that when there's he's Ezra's there a couple of times, we just didn't know it. But yeah, anyways, I love that, and I'm gonna have to go back to that moment and probably have to edit that into this podcast just because
It's very
you have time
interesting. Like, it
codes and
feels
stuff.
very deliberate.
Yeah.
I don't know why it shook me. Because like I knew that his foreshadowing of Vader came in like episode 2 and 3 or just 3. I can't remember. But so like that moment, I was like, this is a weird moment because he's like doing the test and like supposed to be fulfilled. Like, this is proof you're the chosen one. But then they like played a Vader breath, and it's very deliberate and very like it is purposely like just like Dave Filoni himself just went. Notice me.
Yeah, he went into the animation studio and he said, "Hang on 1 second, guys. Let me just throw that in there. Ignore me.
Let me
All right,
add
go
a
back to what
little
you were doing, guys.
spice.
Don't touch that. Let me just leave that there.
Spice.
Finish what you were gonna do." Yeah.
And you weren't the only one. We have Brooke B. Dazzler in the chat that did notice that as well. And so yeah.
Okay, I'm not crazy.
But how about your thoughts on the first one, Element?
So this is the one that said balance comes to the one who faces their guilt. Now I'm not sure if this happened in that episode because I kind of like mind melted into the entire gestalt of the arc. So like
Runs
one
together.
thing that like stood out for sure is when the son was speaking to Anakin alone, and he's trying to court him to the dark side, and he says, "We will destroy the Sith," in Maul's voice, and then "and the Jedi" in Palpatine's voice. And
I did not notice that.
Oh my god. Okay.
To me, it was kind of like,
Chills.
he was a vessel for the purest of dark sides there, and he was representing both sides of the dark side. Like, if you can imagine the dark side having multiple sides and multiple facets of it and multiple ways of being evil, it's like, very different motives, very different goals. One is like a person who had been betrayed by the dark side, but still remains in it, and his goal is to destroy those within it. And then another one who is just bathed in the dark side completely and utterly, and just has this destroy the Jedi and then rule the galaxy. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of thing to happen on Mortis. And I don't know if it was in Maul's voice, maybe it was just Sam Witwer's, but definitely Palpatine's voice saying and the Jedi. And in terms of like the quote, of course, balance and guilt. I mean, Anakin is constantly tested throughout this entire episode, and like his guilt and his guilty conscience is a recurring theme. And I don't know how many times he says it in this episode, or maybe in this whole arc, but Anakin just is constantly saying it was my fault. Mm-hmm. And this episode in this arc is just an example of how much more he needs to grow in order to be able to balance the father or the daughter and the son. And that's where the quote comes in. He's not going to find balance until he finds peace with his guilt and his faults and everything he thinks that he's responsible for.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. And so that's
It's good.
That's why my theory is that Qui-Gon does appear truly, but in the third episode. And my theory is that the first appearance is a manifestation of Obi-Wan's guilt of, I am not the guy to train this kid. But he appears in the third to say that he's the chosen one. This is a test. You guys are doing the stuff, And then Ahsoka has adult Ahsoka, her potential, saying, hey, your master does a lot of stupid stuff, and you follow along with it, and he's rubbing off on you. And she feels guilty because she knows what the right thing is, and she knows what the Anakin thing is. And then Anakin's guilt came up in his mom, and he felt guilty because he was not able to save her, and he felt guilty because after she died, he just did a lot of slaughter. I'm sure some of the people deserved it, but the women and the children, like, who knows? They could have been bad kids, cutting school,
Maybe, right?
cutting class, and smoking doobies.
Oh my god! You're cutting class. You want to see something else that cuts? Oh god, no.
If Anakin is your hall monitor, stay in school, kids. That's all I'm saying.
I'd drop out.
Time to transfer.
All right, so then we get the second episode, which let me pull that back up. It's Altar of Mortis, and it says he who surrenders hope surrenders life. And so this starts, after that test, they try to go back to the ship, and no, they do take off in the ship, but Ahsoka gets kidnapped. And this is where, she gets the evil brought out of her and all this stuff. And at the end of this arc is where the daughter dies. Yeah, your guys' thoughts? I started with Josh, so Shaylee.
The theme of hope in this one was pretty clear because we had Anakin say there's always hope or something like that about Ahsoka. So yeah, it was pretty in your face, but this episode is where I really start to have this new appreciation for Ahsoka because, obviously this feels like where like all this around her with Morai and stuff starts to come in. And what exactly does it mean for Ahsoka that she was saved by the daughter like that? Like, how many implications does that have? Like, is she the new embodiment of the light side, or is it not that deep? I don't fully understand or like have an answer for that. Maybe y'all have insight on that. But this episode was the best part was obviously with Ahsoka, and it kind of sets up what I love about her for her future in Rebels. So I love this episode. I don't remember much what happens outside of that, though. I know Obi-Wan gets the dagger. I think it's this one.
Pretty sure the daughter, daughter. Does Anakin, or is that for the third one? The big thing with Anakin, or is that
that's
like
the third one?
Okay, all right, cool. Just making sure.
This one was Ahsoka for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely an Ahsoka heavy episode, but I loved seeing that what was brought out of her was very connected to the first episode, and it was all internal stuff that was just being brought up to the surface. He was bringing out the worst of her, which also goes to show you that I feel like a lot of people do a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio of the dark side, the Sith, and evil, and they are not the same thing. Yes, if you draw a Venn diagram, they share a lot of area, but they're not the same thing.
Right.
Element, your thoughts?
This episode deals with a lot of the lore that I love about this arc. I just want to point out that the daughter does a Prince Zuko lightning redirect in this, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And anyways, in this episode, we deal with, or it reveals the nature of the dark side, and this is one of the first times it's actually kind of distinguished in Star Wars. The selfishness and the nature of the dark side corruption. And whenever someone comes to me and talks about the dark side and whether or not it will corrupt you, absolutely, I point them to this episode because it's actually quite telling how malevolent this side of the Force is, because while the light and the dark coexist naturally, like in balance with each other when they are in balance, those who seek to control the dark side, as all do, ultimately are controlled by it and by their basest desires and natures. And so we see this with the son, who is just, he's being edgelord again. And then as soon as the opportunity strikes, he almost kills the father, from behind his back. I think that happens in this episode as well. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just, the dark side is just this thing that's bad.
That's bad.
I mean, you can't avoid it. It's just you try to tap into it for power, but you end up giving more of yourself than you get from it in the end.
I always liken it to like to trying to use crack. No, I've never done crack myself, but I
disclaimer out, right? But by the way, I've never ever.
But it's actually it's fairly common knowledge that in the business world, like I love business and studying business and business books. I don't know, it's a weird obsession of mine, but not as weird as Star Wars, so that's okay. But yeah, there's a lot of businessmen, sales, things like that would do it because it would give you energy, and they would be going off. They get extra hours in their day and do all these things. It's not a good thing to rely on because eventually you become a crackhead. It takes
true.
It takes more than it gives, and that's the ultimate point.
I do want to make another comment on hope, because I did kind of just latch onto the dark side on that one. So like the hope in the episode, I think it was the job of the daughter to find it, because again, she was just kind of resigned to being in her role of letting things happen, but she had to find the hope in allowing allowing her brother to be stopped and to go against her nature, letting Obi-Wan find the dagger and fighting against her brother. I thought that was kind of awesome. And then the hope at the end there is the hope that she had to give herself with Ahsoka.
I like that. I like that a lot. But I also think too, when like she the son literally blew force lightning at the dad's back and knocked him down a giant stone staircase. And then Obi-Wan's like, yeah, your brother just tried to kill him. And she's like, no, he didn't. Like,
yeah.
Wait, what?
He couldn't have.
He couldn't. Yeah. But it's not his fault. Like it's
in his nature.
She had unconditional hope, which I don't know. Is that problematic? I don't know. I mean, that's just something that she represents. So I'm curious of your guys' thoughts on that going forward as well. But go ahead.
Maybe she represents both the flawed version of our understanding of the Jedi, and then in her death, like the true version of what we understand as like a true Jedi. Because, she always has this unconditional hope, and she always wants people to do the right thing, and that's just how it is, like we just have to let it happen. But then when something big like this happens, she, like Element was saying, she goes against her nature, and she kind of makes this decision to not be indecisive anymore. And it's a big moment for her, and it's also a hugely important moment for the events of the story as well. So maybe I doubt that Dave was actively going for this particular point, but maybe in her death, this is kind of her. This is kind of like the true idea of what you should be as a servant of the light, not necessarily a Jedi. I know I keep calling her like the true embodiment of what a Jedi should be, but the true embodiment of what a light side understander of the Force should be like, maybe.
No, that's exactly where my mind went while watching this as well. Is that she is what the Jedi are, of not allowing the dark to exist in their minds, and that also being problematic. I agree with you 1,000%.
It also goes in
Too
line
much
with
of a
what's
good
said
thing.
in the Star Wars book too, about how Yoda made the mistake of, allowing the Jedi to go from peacekeepers to warriors, and that it's kind of like what Josh was saying about how the Jedi should have been, and the moment that they made that choice to join the Republic military was the moment the balance was out of whack.
Okay, yes, my mind has. I know it's probably a very obvious revelation to all of you guys, but my mind was just blown because of what has been said about the Jedi all of this time, for all these years, that they're peacekeepers. What was the father? A peacekeeper. Did being a peacekeeper mean that he was all light? No. Does being all light make you a better peacekeeper? No.
Nope.
So, yeah. Anyways. Whew. Okay.
Write a novel on this stuff, man. Seriously.
Now that I'm thoroughly discombobulated, I don't recall who I started with. Has anyone not come?
I can take one for the team. We were talking about the second episode.
Yeah.
Altar of Mortis. Yeah. Solid episode. I'm going to give you the short and sweet version again. Because again, out of all three of the episodes, the only part that before going back and watching it, the only part that I distinctly remember was Ahsoka being like the creepy, like evil Ahsoka, and it scared the living hell out of me when I was like, I am not used to her being like deathly, like evil, like angry and violent. Yeah, like it terrified me. I was like, whoa, when did this come out? 2011? Oh wow, yeah. So yeah, I was a little 14-year-old. I was like, what? That's crazy. What? So yeah. So I had a question. In the final moments of the episode, where the father like is lamenting the death of the daughter, and like Ahsoka's brought back to life, and Anakin and Obi-Wan are both there. And the son like booked it after doing all of the stuff. He realizes what he did, and he like books it and leaves. And the father tells them like, hey, like you need to go, like you need to leave this planet, because if he gets in that ship, like everything's going to hell. Like nothing's going to get fixed. Like he's going to leave. Like you need to get off this planet before he gets to your ship first. And he said, if you don't, the galaxy is going to essentially suffer because of it. Did it actually did it matter in hindsight? Cause he didn't get away, right? Like I've always wondered this. I was like if it's contingent on him not escaping, it's like, I mean, the Jedi still get nuked. Like Anakin still goes back. Now we know like eventually everything is like, oh, happy ever after type thing. But like I always wondered about that, where it's like, well, I'm not sure if it actually, maybe it gets even worse if he gets away, like something like that, like or maybe there's like another variable that we haven't accounted for if he managed to get out. Like you don't need Palpatine and the son out running roughshod and Maul running roughshod everywhere. That's actually kind of terrifying in hindsight. Maul, 3 Sam Witwers. Oh my God. But no, I've always wondered that. Do any of you
Kagebunta no Jutsu.
Right? Oh my God. Shadow clone.
Well, okay.
I actually don't think any of that, but I don't think any of this mattered to anything externally. I think the Mortis gods are extemporal beings, and the father says this a lot. The laws of time, and they can't do anything. They can't interfere. I think this is all just one big test.
Okay. Okay.
I'm among the same mind, but I have noted that down because I want us to come back to this whole thing because
Okay,
there's a
sure.
lot of really cool implications. Although I will say in Legends, somehow the son escaped and was running around doing stuff, and it was
Really? I never heard about that.
in Fate of the Jedi. Basically, he helps them to stop Abeloth, and yeah, it's a whole thing. And what the next series of books look to be hinting towards is keeping Jason Solo's daughter, Alana, from, like, there's two possibilities that she was going to join the dark side and be on the dark side throne alongside the sun. And they're trying to keep her from that fate. Like, it was a whole thing.
Wow. I mean, it makes sense. This episode came out about a year before Disney even bought Star Wars, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me if some craziness got out before Disney was like, nope, no more of that. But yeah, wow. Abeloth? I haven't heard that name in a very long time.
I only hear it in my nightmares. Anyway.
Little Abeloth. Oh, God. Yeah.
So that being said, all right. So we move into the final episode. So let's kind of tie it together. We'll talk about the final episode and then try and wrap up everything that we can and all the loose ends and what we think in our predictions, and we'll just try and wrap it all up in a bow. And so this one we're going to Element first.
So this one is he who seeks to control fate shall never find peace.
Yes.
Thank
you for bringing that out because I forgot.
This episode actually, I mean, as with previous episodes, it's just living up to that quote. Everyone's trying their damnedest to control their fates and control how things are supposed to go. And I think in this episode in particular, the father is displaying the most he's ever displayed in these episodes, the role of custodian, and the role of the will of the Force is more important than anything else. And I like, I don't know if it happened in this episode or the last episode, but I wanted to point out one of his quotes, which was he needed time to mourn all that he has done and all that is yet to be. And that is like the basis for how I see them as extemporal, because they quite possibly, if not for sure, know everything in time that's ever going to happen. I mean, the son shows Anakin his entire future, and then the father removes that vision from his head because he's like, my son broke the laws of time and should not have shown you all of that. So extemporal beings who are just like working from outside of the confines of time and space, and which is why the clones aren't there and everything is all mishmashed and jumbled while Anakin and them are there. Lots of trying to control fate in this episode. Obi-Wan snaps back with the best line that reeks of wisdom, but also reeks of his emo days, which was like the father said, "You cannot interfere," and he's like, "The way I see it, it would not be. If we were not to interfere, Ahsoka and I would not be here." And I don't know if that's how it actually like verbatim, but he said something to that effect, and I was just like, you know what, Obi-Wan, that is some deep wisdomry that you just displayed, because you're right. You are here. You exist right now, and you have a role to play as well.
That's why we're here.
Yeah,
that's why I'm here.
And I think the father knew that. It kind of reminded me of like, so the father telling him not to interfere, and then Obi-Wan's like, "No, we're here for a reason." It reminded me of Empire Strikes Back, when Obi-Wan said, "I cannot interfere," and Luke said, "I understand." And that's when Yoda was like, this kid understands. I have nothing left to teach him.
He gets it.
You know, yeah, he's it was like his approval of acceptance and understanding of his decision and choice that he had made. Like, you're living with the choice and the decision you make, and then the will of the Force is going to just bring you along, you know. And so
in other words, Jesus, take the wheel.
Essentially, right? Gosh, Empire Strikes Back is so good. Quick segue.
yeah.
Gosh, man, I love that movie.
One of the final things about the episode is just learning that the dark side is always working against itself. You know, you think that the dark side is the most powerful thing and has all of this unlimited power, but it's always against itself in nature because it is selfish. So, you know, try to dominate the dark side as much as you want, but it is within its nature, and it is in the nature of tapping into that nature that I say nature so many times in this episode. That you're just ultimately working against yourself if you are to decide you are a dark side person.
Yep.
And going back to what the father said about breaking the laws of time with Anakin, he says, if there is to be balance, what you must have seen must be forgotten. And, you know, this just like ties into everything that Yoda says all the time. It's like, always in motion the future is. And like, you can't act on these visions because you'll never know how they're going to play out. And if you act on them, you may as well have brought them out yourself, like self-fulfilling prophecies. So like the final thing to wrap up this episode, at least on my end, the daughter didn't disappear. So that means she's still alive within Ahsoka and Mirai. The father disappeared. The son didn't. I'll let you guys comment on that.
Very telling.
Yeah, I love it. Also, I apologize for my daughter Suki, who was feeling left out. So she can't
Never
approve,
apologize for
Just
that.
Apologize for Suki.
She likes to pop up.
Where's
and say
Suki?
hello
She's
there.
a blessing.
But yeah, okay. So you know, final thoughts on the arc and the last episode. Josh.
Well, it's the one that I was most that I got the most out of, because like obviously like the imagery of like Anakin seeing his future, and which is a direct tie into the movies and all of that. So that was one of my favorites out of the three. I like what Element said about how I think these guys know pretty much everything there was or is to be about all of these characters. And I really like how the son, it gets kind of demonstrated in that, like, the son, like, as he's showing Anakin his future, or at least like a mosh pit of his future, not necessarily in chronological order, just all of the future stuff. It's kind of cool. And I think that kind of reveals that he knows everything there is to know, because he's manipulating it in a way to make it feel like so overwhelming and negative. And like Anakin probably never even realized that he eventually redeems himself at the end. So he's getting all of this imagery and stuff, and he's like, oh God, I did terrible things. And he's like, yeah, and I'm going to keep throwing all the bad stuff that you did, and you're going to want to stop it, and you're not going to know that like your son and all these other people eventually managed it. So that's a really cool and a very, very dark side of the son. So I give him props for that, for being true to his nature. It's very interesting to me how I remember when I originally watched this, I was actually annoyed, and I was only like 15, so I had no understanding or deep understanding of this. But I remember being so mystified as to why the father didn't let him keep those memories, like didn't let him keep that vision in his head when he took it back out. But then as I get older, obviously, I'm like, oh, well, aside from the very pragmatic answer of because the movies wouldn't exist, Josh, it's also like, oh, like you wouldn't, if you're such a guardian of time and like the understanding of the universe and the Force, if you have the ability to take that away from somebody that wasn't supposed to see all that, then you do that. Like it's just one of those things.
It's like Men in Black. Yeah.
Yeah, like he literally was like, "Hey, I need you to look in here real quick," and yeah, but
it was a weather vane and a satellite.
yeah. But the end of the episode, weirdly enough, is very kind of bittersweet to me because it's like it allows us to have a deeper understanding of maybe not even a deeper understanding of the Force, but just a realization that the Force is like way more complicated than we thought. It's not necessarily us going, oh, we understand all the complexities of the Force, because we still have no idea really like exactly what's going on up there. But it's just us realizing that another door has been opened and we're like, whoa, this is like, and when we get to World Between Worlds, like 80 other doors open. We're like, whoa, this is a thing. Okay. All right. Gotcha. But I always thought this arc has kind of like landed in a very special place in Star Wars because it introduces so much lore about the Star Wars universe. And like, you look back at it and you'll be like, dang, like we didn't think any of this stuff was a thing before we saw this. So like the fact that there are like other Force beings out there that may not necessarily be Jedi or Sith, but still have such a maybe even better understanding of what the Force is. Like that being introduced to us, that blew my mind as a kid. I remember when they introduced like Night Sisters and all this other stuff. And I was like, what? Like what? Why is there like magic in this? And it was like, oh, it's like another kind of like inclination of what the Force is, like another representation of what the Force. It's like, whoa, that's actually really cool that they can all that like different understandings and ideas of the Force can come from different backgrounds. So seeing these guys, these Force beings, almost deity like, show up and have their own understanding of the Force was really cool to me. And so as I look back, initially I rolled my eyes because when you're on a weekly schedule and you can only watch one episode a week and you're excited for all the big action packed like moments, and you get like, meanwhile on Mortis, and you're going to get 2 more weeks of this. It's like, I'm 14. I got to study, like give me some action. But as you get older and you can binge watch, you're like, oh yeah, that's really cool. That's an awesome moment. So this was a solid episode. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
And then you said that they're a deity-like. Palpatine refers to them as gods. He calls them the Force gods once we get to the World Between Worlds. And Shayla, your thoughts? So I almost want to. No. I'll wrap this up because I may end up having to turn this into 2 separate episodes of the World Between Worlds.
Part 2.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
There's a lot, but this is amazing. I'm enjoying this immensely. Shayla, your thoughts? Final episode and wrapping it up.
One thing that stuck out to me this episode, and I haven't said this out loud yet, so this may make no sense, and you're just gonna be like, okay, Shaylee. But like this episode made me think of Anakin's role as the Chosen One a lot, because it feels, because like when I would think about it before, I'd be like, okay, he kind of failed in his role as the Chosen One until the original trilogy, and then he brought balance. But it was interesting to me that he fell to the dark side like in this episode so fast, and then like, but he was still like, "You're the Chosen One," and it just it feels strange because it's like, did you see how easily he fell to the dark side in this episode? And like, he's the Chosen One. That's so interesting to me. He feels like his downfall was completely inevitable. And then when I think about it, it probably definitely was inevitable and had to happen because the Jedi were corrupt too. So like it feels like he brought balance in multiple ways. Like the Jedi kind of had to start over. So he kind of did have to execute Order 66. And I think people have already brought that up. Like, oh, well, he brought balance when he got rid of the Jedi too. But normally when they're thinking about that, they're thinking of that equal amount of Jedi and Sith. But, and so I kind of like wave that off because I'm like, yeah, that's not how balance is. But it does, like watching this today, his inevitable downfall did feel like part of him being the chosen one, because how else would the Jedi have started over? They were like really corrupt, and they were, like you said, warriors. Does that make sense to y'all, what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It made me think of like his downfall felt super inevitable. Like it's just part of being the chosen one, even the bad part, but it had to happen. And that's kind of when I realized in this episode.
Yeah, I totally. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt anybody. Did I interrupt anybody?
No, go.
Oh, sorry. I don't mean to. But no, I always look at Anakin like this big, imperfect, like missile, where it's like he's cutting through, like, you know, like he's cutting through, like he's like chemotherapy for like the Force. Like my guy's cutting through the bad and the kind of good, like everything, in order to make the Force better, to make the galaxy better. And it doesn't feel like that from like the person that's getting killed, like the Jedi that's getting killed by Anakin. But at large, Anakin is this big imperfect missile cutting through literally everything in his path. And that's his role. Like that was always his destiny. His destiny was to raise himself up as a Jedi, turn to the dark side, utterly decimate the Jedi Order, or as we know it, and then cut off the head of the Sith, essentially. That was like his entire role as that entire point. So I agree with you. Like, oh, he fell to the dark side so easily. And like, and that's pretty much why I would argue it's because it's like he's meant to do that. It's like he's like, with like the dynamic with Padme, the dynamic with Ahsoka leaving him, now that we understand that was another contributing factor to him, all of this stuff happening with his life, the mistrust he's getting, all that growing anger, and his frustration with the Jedi Order, which might also be actual, like legitimate frustrations with the Jedi Order in some cases, and then his fall to the dark side. And when he falls hard. It's like, it's not just like a Count Dooku type of thing where he's like, like, I don't know, like the entire rationale for Dooku, but it's like with Dooku, it's different. It doesn't feel the same as like when Anakin's like, I'm going to save my wife and I will kill everyone in this temple in order to make sure that it's like, okay, Anakin, all right, buddy. But it's really cool to see that. And the Mortis arc is kind of this one big, like almost like glass looking at like Anakin's journey. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking all over the place, but yeah.
It goes hand in hand with what the father said. And when you look at the Force as just this thing that is like a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, and then you realize that Anakin has more midichlorians than anybody in the history of the galaxy. And then the midichlorians enable you to listen to the will of the Force. So everything he does, like if you compare him to Count Dooku trying to address the corruption in the Senate and then falling to the dark side, it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
You know? But compared to Anakin, who is just this big midichlorian bomb, everything he does is just going to affect everything to such a great extent. And so when the father says, if there's to be balance, what you have seen must be forgotten, then that means he does have to go through all of this. He does have to go through the, Order 66 and everything leading up to episode 6. And it just all makes sense.
Yeah, I love it. And also, to everyone watching and listening, we're all speculating here, but we've all consumed a lot of Star Wars, so we have a pretty decent understanding of everything. I'm going to jump out and put my theory out there, and it's that the Chosen One prophecy was misread. Anakin is absolutely the Chosen One, but the Chosen One represents the rebirth of the cycle, not the father. I think that Luke is the father. and that Rey is the daughter, and Kylo Ren is the son. Kylo Ren being the darkness, but not Sith, but not evil. The darkness. Rey being the light, but not Jedi, but selfish. That's where I come down on this, and I'm gonna plant my stake in that hill. This is
For it, homie.
this is where I live now.
I'm on that hill with you, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. I'm like having to absorb it. It's a lot. I'm like, wait, but
Because I've literally never heard that before.
Yeah, me neither.
I've never thought that
Oh my
before
goodness.
until just now, but it just makes sense. Because a lot of people were saying, oh no, well, Ahsoka would be the embodiment of the daughter, and that would make Maul the son. And like it doesn't quite fit though.
Doesn't feel as
Then you think about.
But especially the way that the son died, and the father was like, I knew there was still good in you. Good, but he's dark. Because the dark doesn't mean bad. The dark often means bad. In that Venn diagram, they line up a hell of a lot more often than they don't. But it's not a one-to-one equation. It doesn't necessarily mean evil. It doesn't necessarily mean Sith. So.
And then you think about how their lives were linked.
Yes.
And then you think, we had a dyad. That's cool. I like that theory a lot.
What Brandon just said about like dark but not bad, I was actually having to explain that to somebody recently because I was talking about dyads and I was like, there's Ben represents the dark and Rey represents the light, and they were like, well, then isn't it out of balance or something if Ben died? Or let me think of what they asked. But I had to explain. Or no, they said, wouldn't it be out of balance then if Ben got redeemed because then there's two light side users? And I'm like, well, Ben doesn't necessarily represent the light side in that case. Like, I think Ben always would be the dark side of it, but that doesn't mean bad. He doesn't have to be bad. There's like a difference between like being the representation of the dark side of that dyad, and then when he caves into the darkness and actually lets it consume him, that's bad. But like he always has been and always would be the dark side, but that doesn't mean he had to be evil. So I did try to explain that, and that's kind of like what you just said, Brandon. That all makes a lot of sense.
He was born in darkness, right?
Yeah,
He was born in darkness, and then Rey was like, I'm going back to Rey's quote where she said, "Your mistake was thinking that he had already made his choice." So it's kind of like, yeah, he was born in darkness. He's the son, but
and Luke's decision in that is in line with the father.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
It's certainly something to, yeah, absolutely.
That being said, that's just a theory. I gotta let it marinate. Like it's like
Totally.
making mental.
There's something there.
I'm cooking up some mental video right now, and
There you go,
you gotta let it overnight marinate before you fry it. But I'm gonna dip it back in that sauce though. Pep, did I come to you yet?
Yes.
Okay. Overall, it's such a deep arc. There's so much, and we'll never have the full answers. Dave Filoni straight up says, "Oh yeah, we got them, but if I tell you them, it robs you of this journey. So we're not gonna do that."
Can I say this real quick? And I made a TikTok about this. It was humorous, but I was also dead serious. Does anybody notice how every single time we see Dave Filoni, every single time, he looks like he's making a face where it looks like he's hiding one of the biggest Star Wars secrets in the history of mankind. And he's so proud that he knows it and he's not telling anybody. Like he's always like,
yeah, it's a perpetual I know something you don't know.
yeah,
face.
it's literally that. Yeah. I remember when I was watching the Clone Wars panel, and I'm sorry to segue, but I was watching the Clone Wars panel right before they announced the season 7 was coming back. And the entire time, me and my buddy, who's like a mega Clone Wars fan, was like, dude, he's gonna announce it. And I was like, is he? Because I was like, he does this all the time. Like he comes out and he was like, yeah, well, yeah, you know, and it's a shame that we're back now. And I was like, what? What? And then it goes dark and we get the trailer and I was like, oh my God, he did crazy, son of a. But nah, he always has this look on his face where I'm like, oh, I bet he's about to drop some like massive bomb of Star Wars within the next year.
That was a great impression, by the way.
Yeah.
When you said we're back now, that sounded just like him.
Yeah, we're back now. It's like,
well, we got Emily Elizabeth in the chat, and she spoke literally what I was thinking. Except what she wrote is he has a permanent smirk, and I want to augment that and say he has a full body permanent smirk.
Yeah,
like
totally.
I can picture
his aura.
I picture him like walking into Starbucks in the morning, like, "Oh, I know
Hands
some
on
stuff,"
hips.
and
Right.
like no one knows, but he's like, "Yeah, I know some stuff." Like if you
That's
knew.
why he wears the cowboy hat. He hides his secrets in there.
What's under that hat?
Exactly.
It's the Force. The
like a
Force is
dude
under
who's
that hat.
Are
like
you
a
saying
to the Force.
that the hat has a tinfoil lining to keep it from?
That's why he has to wear it all the time.
I breathed a sigh of relief when he finally took it off, and I was like, oh my God, he's not bald. I was like, I had this like fear. I was like, I hope he's not chroming underneath that hat, dude. Because like, I was like, I imagine him with hair. I just feel like I'm gonna be disappointed. But when he took it off, I was like, oh, it's Silver Fox. Great job, Dave. Great job.
I anticipated the opposite. He'd take it off, and he looked like a character in Cyberpunk 2077 with like a purple like, like, oh God.
Oh, that game. Anyway,
I love the game.
I'm enjoying it so far. Quick segue, sorry, but yeah, I'm
Rub
about
it
2
in.
hours in.
It's well, that's a can of worms.
Yeah,
all right.
it sure is. That's a whole entire segment.
A 2013 Xbox says no.
Oh God.
Will not run that game.
If it could, you wouldn't want it to. You would unsolder your motherboard. But
Oh no.
does anyone else remember the Xbox 360 days when you'd have to wrap it in towels and set it a certain way so that it would overheat and remelt the solder so that it would work again? Did anyone else have to do that? Okay.
So I
I've never had to do that.
I got into the 360 days like towards the end of its run, like right before the Xbox One came out.
Wow.
So I never really got to deal with that red ring of death stuff. Like that sounded terrifying to me. Like a $400 console just going, I'm dead now. It's like, please don't. No. But I remember one time I had the 250 gig edition and it was like designed differently because it had to hold more storage. And one day, like, it was like standing on its side, which it's supposed to do that, but it was on carpet floor. So like one day,
no.
so I'm looking down, I'm just glancing down and I see this orange ring. And like, I know orange and red are two different colors, but I immediately was like, no, please don't. But it turned out to be completely different. It was just telling me to get my dumbass Xbox off the carpet. What are you doing?
Yeah, Man, I wouldn't have had that problem if I didn't love Forza so much. Anyway, that's the only reason I owned the console was for Forza.
Wow.
But now we're getting off track. Okay.
sorry.
So, moving forward, we have the World Between Worlds, which is connected, very much connected. That's why I wanted to do these together. We had the iconography that is behind me right now of the father, daughter, and the son. And it played in a lot with this World Between Worlds. And, oh my goodness, I think this was such an excellent addition to Rebels and exit to Rebels and how it tied in the previous two seasons. Like, secretly, and we didn't notice? Oh my God.
So well done.
So I gotta ask. Now there's two episodes, right? It was episode 12 and 13. That was the World Between Worlds, but it's hard to separate the two. It's not quite like how the Mortise Arc was. So I just kind of want to dive directly into the World Between Worlds and the first thing I noted was, and this isn't something we have to talk about, spoiler for Rebels, but Canaan Jarrus died. Caleb Doom, the Jedi, he died, and it was rough. For me, it was probably the hardest Star Wars death that there was. How do you guys feel on that? Go ahead, Shaylee.
I was gonna say, are you just how I feel about Kanan's death? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I have, Star Wars has made me tear up a lot, but until that episode, I had never sobbed at Star Wars. And that episode, I bawled like a baby. That was intense. And so I feel very passionately about that. Is the saddest Star Wars death ever. Star Wars has never made me bawl my eyes out, but that moment I was just like, I have a video of me and I'm just wet. It was awful. Anyways, that's how I feel about it.
Spain without the S.
That's why my favorite people on the planet are people that didn't want to watch Rebels because they didn't like the how it was animated, and then who finally did, and then I asked them about this, and they're just like, "Oh, bro, I was just broken. I turned into
oh, dude,
a puddle of Jello." Kane and Seth, Element 7, your thoughts on it?
On Kanan's death,
Yeah,
it was probably the most impactful death in all of Star Wars, simply because we've had so much of it, but those that were important to us were kind of, in the cusp of reigniting hope or saving the galaxy, or just kind of coming to accept their death as part of the will of the Force and letting it come to pass. But Kanan, his death is kind of the first one that we have, is where it's pretty much the survival of his crew is dependent on whether or not he does this, and there's no other death in Star Wars where someone is actively keeping a blast from expanding to where his friends and his family is, and in the nick of time to let them escape. So it was definitely a rough couple of days for me.
Oh man, I mean, because Rebels was a sleeper hit. Not everyone knew it at first, but it was a sleeper hit. B, there was no Jedi protagonist that we got to spend that much time with that died in their show. No one did that. Number 3 is how heroic the sacrifice was. Number 4 is the last words he said to Hera, who he loves, was, "I'll see you again." Then he goes blind.
Shaylo has left the chat, Kane.
My soul left my body.
For a season and a half. And then he looks, and then the Force grants him the ability to see her again for his last moment.
And I was watching it on XD, so I had no other episode after the fact to kind of tide me over.
Same.
I had to wait.
And then my boy Isaac talks about the music in that last few episodes. I don't know who.
Kevin Keener.
It's Keener, but I've never seen him from that. I've never seen that from him. He reached into the depths of my soul.
It's the vocals during it, dude. That's one of the. So I put that death up there with, and so for those of you who don't know, Fives is my favorite clone trooper. I love Fives. I loved him before his significance in the Order 66 arc and all that. And so when he died, it was the hardest one that I had to watch. And a big contributor to that scene is the music underneath it. It's one of the most moving pieces. Kiner does a great job, in general, with any music piece he does. He does a good job incorporating the Star Wars theme into all of his pieces. and the Star Wars tone into all of his pieces, but like sometimes he hits it out of the park. And the 2 times he really did it were the 2 death scenes. Fives' death. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch it if you can. I understand if you can't. And Caleb Doom's death, because it's like the vocals in the background, and like I think what really hit me when I watched it, because I was at college when this episode came out, and I remember there were a bunch of leaks right before I got to see the episode. Somebody had gotten like a leak of the episode earlier, some crazy thing like that. And there was actually like Twitter talk about what happened in the episode, and I managed to avoid all of it. And so when I watched it happen and it was building up to that moment, I was like, I feel like something really bad's going to happen, because like everybody's all happy. It's like that really big moment of like, everybody's happy again. He broke Hera out of the joint, and now they're going to get her away. And it goes from yay to like, oh my God. And like that
Worst
pause
case
before
scenario.
and just, I think that coupled with him being able to see like all the stuff that you listed, Brandon, and then like when he force pushes the ship away to get them away from the blast, and Hera's like absolutely mortified, and Ezra's yelling at Sabine to get out of here, and Sabine's wiping away her tears. I was just like, yo, like this one, I'm gonna say it. That hit me harder than anything in the Clone Wars. I'm not even gonna lie. Like total emotion wise, I was just like, bro, like I've never seen that level of like realistic reactions to like a loved one. Like the one that's like closest is like freaking out. The other one's like, oh my God, but we don't have time to like, we got to get out of here. And the other one's like, oh my God. And she's crying. And I was just like, oh my, like the next episode was just me. Like, I don't even remember what happened in the next episode, because I was literally just like this while I was watching.
I was
like,
mourning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Caleb
Mourning.
really
Yeah.
died. And I think it was a morning episode. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of the hardest ever. Like really, I was crying in my bed in college. My buddy was like, what the fuck are you crying at? And I was like, dude, I said,
No,
watch Rebels. Stop calling Rebels a Disney. Come watch it with me. But gosh, man, one of the saddest things ever.
Yeah, no, I was depressed for a couple days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because you spend so much time with it. The fact that he is a protagonist, but he is not the protagonist. That's what made it so rough. Because you didn't know how much you loved him until it happened.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's my interpretation of the data that I've collected.
Mm-hmm.
But
The chart says
Head buried in hands. You know.
pain.
but I mean, I have to start there, because that's it. Probably the most important thing to start with for this arc. So we have that, plus we have the Loth Temple. Now we know that Lothal is a Force of Virgins. Just like Dagobah is a Force of Virgins, Mortis is a Force of Virgins, Anakin is a living Virgins, and there's quite a few of them, and a lot of them are outlined in the Star Wars book, which I is normally by my desk, but it's not here right now.
It's missing.
And within that Loth Temple, before we really dig into the meat of things, I just want to point out that we actually saw glimpses of the World Between Worlds twice before. I want to see if you guys recall those, or if they left any lasting impressions on you. But every time that they've come to this temple on Lothal, Ezra he spoke to Yoda once, and it was just like a bunch of sparkling dots. But as he followed these dots, he was on. I mean, the animation was exactly the same. He was on the little circle, and he's talking to the voice of Yoda. We can't see Yoda, but he is talking to Yoda, who's alive on Dagobah, which is another Force Virgins. Yeah, pay attention. I think that means something. They come back to that temple later with Ahsoka, and that's when Caleb Doom, also known as Canaan Jarrus, gets knighted. But during that time period, Ezra has another vision. This time he can actually see Yoda. Yoda says, "Oh, it's because your powers are growing," but he's still on the same circle, and it's the same as the world between worlds. I believe that this shows that the world between worlds is that the temples are founded on Force Virgences for a very specific reason. Perhaps as a way to guard these areas. But I'm curious on your guys' thoughts now that we're in the world between worlds. We're talking about Star Wars Rebels. Of these spots, Force Verges, Canaan's death, the Lothal Temple, the Loth Wolves that first were just going through a tunnel and we saw them. It looked like they hit hyperspace, but the second time we saw them in these episodes, I mean, they're walking through like a grain field, and they just kind of dipped in like that horrible sand shark horror movie.
Oh God, I know what you're talking about.
I got to hear your guys' thoughts on that. And for this one, I'm going to Element 7 first.
So the world between worlds. The first thing I want to point out is that the gateways, if we're going to follow the Virgins kind of theorem, the gateways are in Jedi temples, which means that the kind of virgins that you would need, and this is speculative at best, but the kind of virgins you would need in order to access the world between worlds is light side virgins. And it also makes sense.
I do have to ask in that case though, because we've only seen a few gateways that were specifically had icons around them, but the one that Palpatine was reaching out through looked like it had the Sith emblem above it, just rounded.
Now that doesn't seem like he didn't have access to it.
Great point.
So
I just wanted to point that out so you could expand on it. I know you know. It's so it was very likely the Sith temple that was below the Jedi temple on Coruscant. It's not been confirmed, but that is heavily implied. But Pep, and I'm sorry I'm throwing you this curveball, but
no,
I feel like you're the guy to throw the curveball too. So.
I mean, so you have to distinguish between like these points, these vergences. There's egress and ingress. So like how Palpatine is displayed is an egress portal, so he can't really come in. That's why he's trying to tether Ezra, and he's like, "Show me the way, help me." He's like, you know, he needs a visible tether to the light side to get in, but even then I don't even think it would have been possible, because it like, just judging from all of the symbolatry and the Loth Wolves and how the gateway is shut by the sun, I believe, if we're looking at or paying attention to the order in which they move. I don't remember, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I'm of the belief that the world between worlds is a light side vergence, and it needs to be a light side vergence in order for you to gain access to it, because in order for you to gain access to the Nether, you need to die on the light side. So, and this world between worlds is just an information highway of the cosmic force, just connecting all of the vergences together across time. So in a sense, just like the Mortis gods, the world between worlds is extemporal, but like this is the realm that I believe that Force users go when they die on the light side selflessly, right? Their body disappears and they flow through the world between worlds. And this kind of goes hand in hand with how Caleb Doom's identity latched onto a Loth Wolf, because although he didn't have training to maintain his identity after death, a Loth Wolf picked up his identity. Like, because the Loth Wolves, as seen in the murals for the Mortis gods, they're the keepers of the gates, the gatekeepers. I hate saying that word with Star Wars. That they're the guardians.
Gatekeepers. They're the gatekeepers we like.
They're the guardians of the world between worlds, right? And they pass through it freely. That's their shtick. So Canaan dies, and his identity just passes through. He has no idea how to maintain it or like persist through death. And then, a loath wolf travels through and it latches onto him, and then it starts talking to Ezra, and then people start thinking this white wolf is Caleb. Yeah. So I think like the biggest thing I will say about the World Between Worlds is that like it's a light side Virgins, and it's interesting to see that there was a Mortis gateway to one on the Jedi Temple, and I'm wondering if every single temple had a gateway to a specific Virgins on their planet or wherever it was.
Yeah, I wonder that too, because I mean, there's a handful of ones that we see close enough to see the iconography around them. The one that surrounds the one that Ahsoka was in did look like that same Sith temple. The one that Palpatine was did have the iconography of the Sith, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those were both ingress and egress. And also, Palpatine was able to send the Force through, not himself. And Dave Filoni went on record saying that the destruction would have been from crossing that barrier. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Mace, your thoughts?
Well, I'll take a different angle. The World Between Worlds, in terms of the significance to the rest of Star Wars, like fans or lore or anything like that, it was I know we kind of hinted at this when we were talking about the Mortise Arc, where it was the beginning of them really opening our eyes to what we don't understand about the Force still. Well, the World Between Worlds kind of busted every single door open. And so now it's like, oh, okay, there's no way we're ever going to truly, completely understand everything there is to know about the Force, or at least it'll be a very long time before we do. I thought the World Between Worlds was my favorite episode of, or the World Between Worlds. Like, was it one episode or two?
Technically, it was two, but it was like one. It was 1.75 in my opinion.
I had a feeling. Yeah, it kind of ended. One episode ended with the World Between Worlds, and then the rest of the episode was okay. So I felt like that episode was like the series finale in a way to me, because like that was like the big. I know like Thrawn and everything like that. That was cool. Like I love Grand Admiral Thrawn. I love the Ezra fighting him at the end of the series and like the epilogue. That was all cool. But like the World Between Worlds episode, in terms of like significance to Star Wars at large, to me, like that felt like the end of the series, and like complete with Ezra letting go and accepting that Caleb Doom can't like be pulled out of that portal, and saying goodbye to him for the last time. He's talking to the wolf, and it was probably Caleb. So like when I look at it, I go, wow, like it's an incredibly well-made episode. It raises even more beautiful questions. And I do appreciate how they take away Canaan from us. So Dave Filoni is like, I gotta give you back Ahsoka. Like I can't leave Ahsoka's fate ominous anymore. Like I took away one of your favorite characters, so let me give you back one of your favorite characters. And so it was lovely to see her again. But yeah, it was very solid episode. I really appreciated how they really drove home the fact that like everything Star Wars was, you could hear it. Like you could hear lines from other movies. Like you heard Jyn Erso, like the time to fight is. I was like, oh my god! I did the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where I was like, hey, that's her, that's Jyn. Like you hear like all these lines from all these big moments in Star Wars history, and they probably heard way more, but it just kind of drives home the fact that the World Between Worlds is this kind of central, almost library, if you will, of every major Star Wars event to possibly have ever happened, because it's not actually in that reality that we know as Star Wars. It's outside of it looking in. It's almost like a watcher almost from like the Marvel comic books, where it's like this happened here and then that happened there. It's kind of where we would be in this situation. But yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Shaylee, I got to hear your thoughts, but I also want to add the added caveat of, is this time travel? Of course, after Shaylee, everyone else can weigh in on this, but but from Mace's thoughts, I gotta toss it in. Shaylee.
So I wanted to watch when I was trying to grasp the World Between Worlds, I wanted to see other people's perspectives on it too. So I watched some YouTube videos, and I noticed that a lot of people do think that it's just like straight up time travel. Like you can go anywhere, and like I do not get that impression at all. Because everything we've seen was one of those vergences, I think, and in a significant moment for the history that's happening. And like people, I think they misinterpreted that because they looked at the Canaan portal where he was about to die. But I don't think that that wasn't even really there. That was because immediately who's behind that image of Canaan? It's Palpatine, and the Sith iconography is on the top of that portal. I don't think it was actually a portal to Canaan. And I think people saw that and thought oh, well, we can go back to any event now and rewrite it. That's what I noticed a lot of people in the YouTube videos. But that was tempting Ezra. That wasn't actually. So anyways, and all the other ones we see were the Vergences and during these important moments to save Ahsoka. And so I don't think that you can just I'm just going to time travel here now. But the Force may open up to different times as needed. When they saved Ahsoka. Yeah. But I don't think it's just straight up time travel. I noticed a lot of people do think that, and I don't think that it's that at all. What else was I going to say about it? Oh, I don't know if this is getting too ahead, but I read stuff today that was really interesting, and it was talking about how the World Between Worlds was kind of in the Rise of Skywalker when she heard all the voices, because that's kind of how it worked before. And then in the visual dictionary, it said, I wrote down the quote, but I'll just try to paraphrase it. It was looking through a window to another place, a place between places, is what it said. So I was like, I
think that was heavily implying that was the world between.
Yeah.
I was trying to. How could I display a heavy hand if this was made out of lead?
Do you have the Hulk hand?
So I just think that's an interesting point to bring up. That it kind of it probably was in the Rise of Skywalker, and that's how she heard all the voices, and people were like, oh well, we heard Ahsoka's voice, she must be dead. But some people were like, well, not necessarily. But if it's the World Between Worlds, she doesn't have to be dead.
None of them have to be dead,
right? So
not even MaceAhWindu.
Oh my goodness,
he's dead, right?
Just saying.
Just saying, guys.
But yeah, I just thought that was I think that that's a very interesting point to bring up, because I love how everything gets tied in together. And I loved reading that, especially when it was a place between places. I was like, son of a bitch, that's exactly what it is.
you know what you're doing. It's like when you see a thirst trap on TikTok. You're like, you know what you're doing. Don't stop pretending like this is not a thirst trap.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was super interesting to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another important thing to note is that because like you said, a lot of people think, oh, it's just straight time travel, but Ezra only saw what was happening to Ahsoka because Morai showed him. Morai opened that particular one, and he didn't go through. He reached into it. He didn't go through it, and I actually think that that's very important to understand, because it was. I actually think that Ahsoka's survival represents something else. It may have a different purpose, and it may be the reason behind the iconography behind the Ahsoka show. If you saw all the things, and then when you watch
Nice segue.
when you watch the episode, and he hits the daughter's hand, and then it shifts the circle, and it creates these straight lines with a circle at the top that looks exactly like Ahsoka's staff. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities out there, and so I don't want to speak for anyone, but I'm very, very curious of your thoughts. Element?
I do have a couple of thoughts. I did want to comment on the time travel thing. I'd say it's not time travel if in fact all of time exists in that world, and like you're not traveling to it, it's just there. And the whenever I hear the word vergence, or so this is important to know, in the Aeonomika, which is one of the Jedi scriptures that Luke had, it describes the chain worlds theorem as they were studying it back then. Then they go on to describe the world between worlds as the vergence scatter. So I'd say it's not time travel in that it is, again, of like with the definition of the word vergence, it is a vergence of a whole bunch of vergences in the Force. So, with Ahsoka and Anakin's fight on Malachor, that's definitely a vergence in the Force. Huge events in the cosmic force that are kind of linked.
And that temple, by the way, is a confirmed vergence in the Force and has its own specific iconography for the episode.
And as far as Ahsoka goes and being able to reach into that portal or that doorway, I think has a lot to do with how inexorably linked they are, Ahsoka and Morai. So if Morai, being a proxy of light, having access to the world between worlds, was what enabled Ezra to reach and grab her, because she was already tethered to that world. And so going into the Ahsoka show, judging from the logo, she is this symbol or this traveler of this vergent scatter. And I think a lot of what Luke finds from the Jedi scriptures and the notes talking about chain worlds theorem has a lot to do with probably what Ahsoka is going to find out about it. And I think, given her connection to Morai and having that kind of access to the world, like the Loth Wolves have access to it, we'll see first and foremost that it's not the most powerful thing in the world. It's not going to enable her to just like control time and control every event in the galaxy, but it is something deeper with a lot of metaphysical implications that that I am super excited to just dive into from episode 1. Like if Ahsoka episode 1 comes out and like after the episode, I'm just like jaw on the floor and I'm like, I don't understand what just happened, I am like all for it, because I'm just going to watch that episode 10 times. So yeah, there's a lot of implications. There's a lot of usage of the world between worlds, surprisingly, in the sequels with the Jedi texts and the use of, the world between worlds in The Rise of Skywalker. It just kind of like bringing everything together and just kind of standardizing the lore in a way that hasn't been used a lot, like as a through line in Legends and all of the old material. Because now, you know, from Clone Wars to Rebels to the sequels,
Oh, it
and
makes
now
me
to
so
the
excited.
and now
Yep.
to the Ahsoka show. There's a whole through line for this one specific realm that is just waiting to be explored. I freaking love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing I can add.
I agree.
I'm not even gonna try. Yeah. Solid answer. I feel the exact same way. I think the Acolyte show could also provide some because isn't the premise of that show like it's centered around the dark side, but around the time of the High Republic, right? Which, by the way, I am so excited for that era. It's like the Star Wars golden age, like the 80s of Star Wars. Like, they're wearing like golden robes, and I'm like, oh my god, I love the vanity. I want it.
I picture it like seeing the Jedi Order and the Jedi Temple in the High Republic is like seeing Wonder Woman and Themyscira in the movie. It's just like a whole island full of Jedis just like flying around and being powerful.
Yep.
Yeah.
The peak
With no
Jedi.
with no Anakin to freaking
Yop them. No, but seriously, I remember, and again, segue, but I remember when they first announced it because it was called Project. They had a code name for it before they actually unveiled it as the High Republic era, and I was looking at the featurette they have on Star Wars' YouTube page, and as I was watching it, they were talking about like, the Jedi are at the height of their thing. And I'm like, okay, that's a pretty cool premise. And they're talking about how like there are like Jedi at outposts at certain points of the Outer Rim galaxy, and Jedi kind of operate as like Texas Ranger. I was just like, yo, I want this. So they're like, it's like one Jedi is like in this one particular sector and he takes care of that like entire. I'm like, oh my God, dude. It's like, I can't wait, dude. But yeah, the Acolyte show, getting back to that, the Acolyte show is supposed to, I mean, I think it could explore some of that as well. That'd be pretty cool.
It's going to give us more dark side, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Maybe appease some of those gray Jedi complainers that I have wars with every other day.
We all do. Star Wars does, as a concept in general, has a war with these people, but that's a whole separate topic. No, I'm super excited for Acolyte as well for the same reasons. It's a brand new era. I hope that they're gonna bring in some Darth Bane vibes and like. There's just so much of that we can do here, and just discovering exactly what the dark side means to these people. But yeah, I mean, like you guys, I agree again that well, Dave Filoni actually said it. You know, it's not time travel; it's time travel-ish. Yes, Ahsoka did get saved from it, but she didn't die. It's not like she died and someone went back in time and saved her. Each moment in time only happens once, and it's possible that this specific moment was orchestrated specifically to save her. When Ezra walked in there, Morai was already there. Now, this could also very, very much be directly related to her having being given the life force of the daughter, who is an extra time being, exists outside of the stream of time. It's entirely possible that that's the only reason that she was able to travel through it, and that most people would not be able to. A lot of possibilities exist. We don't have the solid answers to them. We're trying to get there. I believe we will get there. But there's, I don't know, it's amazing to me. Because again, it's not going back and saving someone that died. She didn't die. She was saved the first time through. Each individual moment happens only once. And I think a lot of people have trouble comprehending time not being linear. Which it is an interesting concept, and that's why I like kind of like the Mobius way that this was displayed to us. But yeah, there's just a lot of possibilities. But speaking of this rescue, I gotta ask, because Ahsoka was rescued. Palpatine was trying to get in, was reaching in and trying to get in through Ezra. How does that work? How was he able to see in but not come in, but try to grab Ezra? And who can access the world between worlds? Yeah, I'm curious your guys' thoughts on this one. And I believe I started with Shaylee, so I will start with Element.
I honestly don't know, man.
Me neither, man.
It seems like Palpatine or Sidious at this point just has access to a lot of Jedi artifacts just as a result from Order 66, and he is allowed at least this much clarity into how they worked with Virgin Scatters. Now, obviously, of course, he didn't have access to it. He couldn't come into it freely, and he needed to tether to someone on the other side, just like Ahsoka was tethered to Morai. But I mean, that's. I mean,
I'm sorry. I'm like channeling Clarion, the Witch Boy. Are we going like Young Justice here?
Yeah, there's not much I can say on that front besides, I think, of course, canonically, it's confirmed that the Wolves can access it freely, so they are just the guardians of it. But yes, in terms of who has access to it, I firmly believe that the light it's a light side virgin, so someone who is tethered to such a powerful incarnation of the light, Ahsoka and Morai, additionally would have equal access to the world between worlds, just like the Loth Wolves do.
Is it significant that channeling the light side through the daughter was the entrance versus channeling the Force through the son was the destruction of the portal?
Yeah.
God damn it!
I mean that it's apropos, isn't it? Like the light shall set you free, and the dark shall imprison you.
No, you're absolutely right, because that was actually specifically stated from the father, and the father said that the dark side was destruction. He said day and night, destruction and creation. And so, yeah, it is absolutely apropos. I was hoping you would elaborate, but it's all good. It's all good. Josh, your thoughts?
I wanted to say, do you think that, because we're talking about who has access or who has the capabilities or wherewithal to access this like absolutely incredible area, do you think and I'm kind of just throwing this at the wall and I don't know if it's true or accurate, but do you think that Ezra's connection with his ability to connect with animals and the wolves in particular, do you think his ability to connect with the wolves who have have free access to this world between worlds, do you think that could potentially boost his own chances of kind of getting in there? Because this kid, this dude is the dog whisperer. My man's is Ezra pulled up a squad of whales to beat Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I have my own feelings
He's
about
like Aquaman.
he's literally Aquaman, but like I can't even say not useful. I mean, Jason Momoa plays him now. I'm kind of scared to talk shit now. But no, like, do you guys think that like his connection with like animals and more specifically the wolves who have this ability, do you think that could affect his own ability to be able to access this world between worlds? I mean, I think there's a reason why we haven't heard from this kid in like 2.5 years now. Like, we have no idea what happened with Ezra. I mean, I wonder if that's going to be explored or if it will ever be explored. I don't know.
I think more so than his connection to the animals, it was connection to Doom.
Caleb, yeah, maybe, yeah. I just have a feeling. I just have a feeling he's coming back with Ahsoka's show. I have a feeling.
Or maybe it's both of them together. You know, maybe it's the fact that because I also agree. I believe it's a light side versions, and that when you die in the light side, you pass through this world between worlds, and that's where you could be saved by someone. Your consciousness be saved by someone like a Yoda or anyone else. But knowing how soon the next test would happen, that he would choose coming back through this wolf, because of knowing his connection to these animals. I believe that could absolutely be the case. And by that connection, give him the final lesson that will help them continue to the goals. I mean, so for anyone that's part of the cosmic force, time isn't a thing. Now, yes, you can interact with the physical world, but you can't interact. You can't interrupt or disrupt things directly of what's going on. You can, and this is specifically stated that you can influence people and events. You can't cause them. You can't do the thing.
Right.
So if you are just trying to play that role, but time isn't a thing at all, you know what the end goal is. That's a question I get constantly of, well, if the Force Ghosts can interact, why didn't they just like beat Palpatine or all this stuff? And the fact of the matter is that since they have always had all time, all of it as their playground, they interact with it as they see fit from the perspective of having all time as their playground. And it may be different than what we can conceive of in a linear sense, but that's a whole separate thing. I got way off track here. I believe I'm on you, Shaylee, your thoughts?
I barely remember what we're given thoughts on.
That's entirely my fault. I apologize.
Well, it's a good thing. Conversation is good. I'm just trying to remember what we're talking about. I guess it was.
I normally remember this. This topic is just
there's so much.
There's access to the world between worlds.
Yeah. So I would pretty much think the same thing. I would think that it's tied to light side abilities, which is tied to how only light side force users can become like force ghosts. Like I'm sure it's all connected, and that's why Palpatine can't access it. And just another example of Palpatine trying to get something like immortality or access to space time, and that he'll never get like you could a light side user. Like, look at all the links he went through to try to get immortality in the Rise of Skywalker. But if you're a light side user, you just become a force ghost and it's better. And it's like, if you're a light side user, you could probably access this world between worlds, but like at divergences or however it works, but he'll never be able to do that. It's just another thing he's pining after. Yeah, I would just think it's going to be all. I'm sure we'll get more clarity on it, but I'm sure it'll just be all connected to like how, because everybody we've seen would be like Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Yoda, and they're the ones who talked about training and getting that, like learning how to become a Force ghost. So I'm sure it's all connected. yeah, basically just repeating what you already said. But
Which I think is awesome, because if you couldn't achieve immortality through the Force, what's the next best thing? Probably trying to achieve immortality through physical means, which is, what we've been seeing. I think it's just interesting how all of this it's all connected, all in a very deep way, and yeah, I'm loving what we have now, but that brings me to my next point. We recently got announced that we would be getting an Ahsoka show. And in the show, they actually showed us the logo, which is circular and has a lot of iconography, and a lot of it is similar to the World Between Worlds. As well as we know Ahsoka was holding a staff, which was long, straight line with a circle at the top of it, which is also reminiscent of the World Between Worlds, as soon as,
like right behind your head.
Exactly. It looks specifically like this one. I think that one is her staff. Does that have any meaning? What do you guys think we're gonna see in the Ahsoka show? And we are going to MaceAhWindu first.
Sure. I do think it's going to have a lot to do. If not the major plot point, it's going to certainly be like an undertone of the entire series run. It's going to have something to do with it.
Can I add one side topic?
Oh, sure.
Is this also going to be, because Rebels was its own story, but it was also a Clone Wars reclamation project, closing up some loops.
It's a consolation prize.
Is Ahsoka going to close up some of the loops we got from Rebels, as well as all this stuff?
So I was going to lead in. I think we're going to find out I think we're going to find out what's going on with Ezra. I mean, I personally believe that there's a strong chance that the next time we see Ezra Bridger, or at least the next time we prominently see Ezra Bridger, will be in that show. And I think the World Between Worlds has a lot to do with it. Not necessarily that like Ezra's stuck in the World Between Worlds with Grand Admiral Thrawn playing checkers, but like that. But I think I
would watch Ezra, that show too.
I would too. I would totally watch that show, and Ezra would learn so much from him. But strategy wise, but I think a lot of what she's going to be going through, trying to figure out. I think Ezra, maybe not co-star, but I think he might have like some roles in that show. The question was, is there going to be any like loose end type of stuff? I don't know by this point. Do we know when the Ahsoka show takes place?
During The Mandalorian.
It's during The Mandalorian? See, I don't know what loose ends
roughly during. What does during mean? Does it mean that the first episode is going to start before we saw her in The Mandalorian?
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't necessarily
season 2 finale.
Right, yeah. So I don't necessarily know what loose ends could be tied by this point. What loose ends are there for Ahsoka? Maybe we might like get an update on what Sabine's up to or something like that, but I'm not sure. Because I think
you spoke about them. You spoke about them.
Oh, like Ezra, Grand Admiral Thrawn, all that other stuff. I mean, I think we're gonna see that. I mean, I truly do. So yeah, I mean, we literally got a title screen. So I think we, by process of elimination, well, we don't know anything about Ezra. We don't know anything about Thrawn. We don't know what Sabine is up to. Presumably still searching for Ezra. And we know Ahsoka sent Grogu off on his way with Din Djarin, and now we have absolutely no idea what she's trying to do now but find Grand Admiral Thrawn. So couple that with the title, which strongly resembles The World Between Worlds, I think the show is going to have something to do with that.
I agree wholeheartedly. In addition, by the way, I'm not going to put you on the spot right now for it. Actually, I'll I'll wait till Element to actually ask the question. But if this does do some Rebels reclamation, I'm curious about a fan cast. I already know he has one in the books, so we'll do like a quick like double loop. But
Okay.
Shaylee, your thoughts on it? Are we going to see more of this in the Ahsoka show? Is the Ahsoka show a Rebels reclamation? Your thoughts on it?
I think it'll definitely be a sequel show to Rebels, but I don't think that's going to be the main meat of it. Basically, like I think that it's going to be super lore heavy because this is something Dave Filoni's been setting up for a long time. It started with like just the Mortise Arc, and then we got World Between Worlds and Rebels, and now like it's the whole title or like the whole title screen. I don't know, you know what I'm saying. I think it's going to be super World Between Worlds heavy. Because Dave's been setting this up for a while. Like we were talking about how there's like the through line that it's all so calculated. Like Morai like always appearing at the perfect time, and like we're just in like Morai looking exactly like the daughter, like the color scheme and everything. Like it's all the little details are so perfect. So it's like Dave Filoni's setting up something big is my prediction, and we're gonna get I think it's going to be a sequel to Rebels, but it's going to be definitely a deep dive into Ahsoka and what exactly her role is in connection to the daughter now and the World Between Worlds and stuff. I think it's going to be super heavy in that aspect.
Yeah, I love it. All right. So Element.
Definitely a heavy lore mythology show, and definitely a continuation for the Rebels crew. Not all of them, but some of them who need to kind of tie off loose ends. But I think, and I said this in our podcast as well, I think Ahsoka is going to be kind of like a time cop, where she's going to find out more about the world between worlds and all of these vergences and visit all of these vergences. Yeah, isn't David Hayter Chopper?
No, Chopper is Dave Filoni.
Oh, wait, wasn't he? Then Hater was BB-8, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was half of BB-8.
Who else am I missing?
Well, if
I say God rest his soul, but there's a clear difference in look and age.
I mean, what does Chris Griffin say in the in the Family Guy version? It's like there's 2 sons and no women. Speaking of women, Shaylee.
Oh my god!
So
I'm sorry for the worst segue ever.
good segue.
Boo this man.
I boo myself.
I thought it was real natural. I barely noticed.
You may proceed, Queen.
Well, see, I didn't actually have one ahead of time. I just really like fan casting stuff. But the issue is I don't consume a lot of media, so I don't know a lot of actors by name. But I will say that the guy on Twitter who said he was going to play Ezra would be a good Ezra.
I think so. Raul Coley.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I have to like sit down and think and be like, okay, I watched this movie a long time ago. Who's the cast of that movie? And then I have to look up their name, and then I'm like, could they? You know what I mean? So I don't know actors off the top of my head. I know that one would be good though.
I wouldn't be opposed to it, and I think whatever they choose to cast. Star Wars hasn't really have a big bad history with like miscasting, in my opinion.
No, not at all.
I think they always generally know what they're doing when they cast somebody. I'm always ultimately, at the very least, okay with who they choose.
I've never really had a moment where I was disappointed.
Nah, I mean, partially
Great
because,
casting, bad handling of some characters.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
You actually, we kind of glossed over it, and I apologize. I'll come back to Josh and then go to Shaylee. But on the Ahsoka show being like a reclamation project for Rebels, being the Rebels sequel that we're looking for. And thoughts on that?
Will it be? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it. I think this is its. I think it's going to be its own thing. I think it'll be. There will be elements, and this is just my prediction. I could be. Totally
7
wrong
elements
about this. but I'm of the opinion that Rebels did a really good job wrapping up like a general, like, in terms of like massive plot. Like, we know that Grand Admiral Thrawn and Ezra is still out there. But those are the only two real things, and Sabine, those are the only two real things that I really see tying the whole, like, oh, hi, Element, words, tying like Clone Wars to Rebels to the Ahsoka show. Like, I think this is going to end up being her, like, not her own thing per se, but like a kind of sort of separate, like, journey, if that makes sense. We're going to see characters like Ezra and Thrawn show up, and in that sense it might feel like there's some continuity, which is good. Like, I like when Star Wars is connected, but I think it's going to end up being its own thing. I don't know if it's going to be a what would classify as a sequel show, even though there's growing suspicion that the Ahsoka show will be the sequel show that everybody keeps wondering when it's going to come out. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you, because although Rebels wrapped up a few Clone Wars arcs and continued some of them, it was not a Clone Wars sequel show. But you know, we don't know. Haley, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it'll be kind of like I don't think it's going to be a sequel to Rebels. It'll happen after Rebels, and it'll be a Rebels will be like the kickoff. But I think it'll become its complete own thing. And like, I know a lot of people really wanted a Rebels sequel show, and that is totally valid. But I just personally think Rebels ended right where it was supposed to. I think it's like just perfect. Perfect. I would not. I just think it's honestly probably my favorite Star Wars media. So like, I just like, it's perfect. I want to leave it like this little perfect thing that it is. And I think it wrapped up perfectly. I don't see a need for a sequel show. But I do. Yeah, I think the Ahsoka show will definitely connect and wrap up some stuff. But I think it'll definitely be its complete own thing. I think. I don't know. That's just my prediction.
I agree. I think the Star Wars fandom has to kind of come to grips with the fact that people's and characters' stories can go on without it being a sequel. Like, if that makes sense. Like, it's not going to be a continuation of Rebels. It's just Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra have a different story that they're going on now.
Mm.
Yeah, I do agree. I do want to apologize for everyone in the chat that the scene changed. I wasn't aware that it changed, but I think I may know how or why it happened. But yeah, so I will...
Can they still hear us?
They could hear us, but it happened like 15 minutes ago.
That's okay. Right. It's no big.
It's mainly a podcast anyway, right? So
it's true. But how can we see your handsome face, Josh?
We see it every day on my following.
Come on, man. Don't boost me up, man. It's just gonna set my. Oh my god. Good one, guys. Straight over. Thanks, guys. I knew it was coming. And it's still. I believed you. I trusted you guys.
I wasn't planning that.
Oh my god.
That was just, you just set me up, man.
My god, man. I'm gonna start charging people every time they ask me that, bro.
Hey, man, you know, if I had a nickel for every time someone asked me if I was single, I'd be poor AF.
I have one nickel. And you can count that stuff on your hand.
But
Sanity.
it's all good. Like all right. So I love you guys so much. All of you. If I mean I have a dream. That,
Okay, all
that,
right, we're doing okay.
that we can
We're setting up something big right here.
that Element and I can set up like some sort of Airbnb situation for the next Star Wars celebration in 2022. You guys can both come out and we can all just chill as fans and just like make TikToks, talk Star Wars, love life, and just be nerds. You know what I mean? Like that's the goal. I love you guys
Dyad
so
in the
much.
high ground panel.
Absolutely.
Seriously, no, but actually, and I also wanted to add, guys, some TikTok stuff. We're not quite out of the woods regarding like potential banning or anything like that just yet. It's in the courts right now, so we have no idea where these guys are going to lean. So far, every judge who's reviewed it has said, like, no, like you can't just ban it on these bases. So far they're winning. And there are, in the opinion of a lot of these legal experts, they don't think that the block of the ban is going to be overturned, which is a good thing. Like they don't think that, because right now it's in the appeals court, the DC District Court of Appeals. And so they just had a hearing on Monday, and it sounded like the judges were a little reluctant to uplift that block of the ban. So remember, like, people are like, oh, like the Supreme Court can take it up. The Supreme Court takes about 2% of every single case that comes out of the appellate courts. So there's like 8,000 cases a year. The Supreme Court will maybe look at like 20 of them or something crazy like that. Yeah. So there's a very real chance that whatever the appeal court decides is the end of it. Like totally. Like the Supreme Court, like, I mean, if they want to, they could, but there's a very real chance that when this is decided, it's decided if it's in our favor. And then after that, when there's a new administration, the hope is that this administration decides that they have bigger fish to fry. So that's what we're all hoping for. I always feel bad because, like, I always like force myself not to pay attention to it because I just get too nervous and worried, and I always just want to enjoy. But what I was getting to eventually was that whatever happens with TikTok, whatever happens with any of this stuff, I sincerely hope that we can all stay in touch one way or the other. I don't want it to be the end of our interactions as Star Wars fans. I hope if it means the end, I hope it's the beginning of something new. Not to sound corny or anything like that, because it's
the start.
No, seriously, but yeah, like, but in all seriousness, it's exactly how I feel. It's not necessarily like losing the app. Like, apps come and go all the time. It's losing the people that, you know, you get to develop relationships with, and we never even met each other in person. Like, I think the world of you guys, and the people that aren't on this podcast in particular too. And so I do want to see you guys in the future when COVID dies down. We could make these kinds of trips. It's a really cool, fun experience. Seriously,
everyone bring your certificate of vaccination.
Right? Yeah, totally. I have been vaccinated.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, there's so many. Okay, I didn't think I'd be making friends on the internet at my age. I didn't think that was a thing at all. And so, yeah, that's strange to me, but it's amazing.
Short of finding a dyad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And
I have to show you the notes I took for this episode. It's your notes that you had in the email.
I mean, that being said, I didn't quite make the cut to make it to Victoria Vader's wedding, like some people. But that's okay. That's okay. I feel like I am invited adjacent. I'll be there in spirit. But no, in all honesty, I do love you guys. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But now that I have everyone's emails, you better let me know if you change them. by the way.
But
We'll for sure keep in touch. And
absolutely.
You have my number.
Yeah, that one's not in danger. But yeah, I appreciate you guys all. Yeah, let's go around. Let me know where everyone can find you, and all your stuff, and if there's any closing messages. And we will go to Shaylee first.
I had so much fun. Thank you for letting me talk about this stuff because it is my favorite stuff to talk about, Force lore. You can find me on TikTok at Shaylo_Ren and now also on Twitch at Shaylo_Ren. And that's the only social medias I care about.
By the way, your Twitch setup is immaculate.
Really?
I was going to say, I actually really like it. I think it's...
The screen layout's not great yet because I don't have an eye for aesthetic, but thanks. I'm glad it reads well.
You're my favorite unicorn with a blue butterfly. For sure.
Brandon, I'm the only unicorn in the blue butterfly.
Those are both the same thing. They're not mutually exclusive.
It's like you're my favorite Shaylo Ren.
Hey, there's 2 of them on TikTok.
Oh,
because I wanted.
okay.
Yeah, because
Really?
I wanted the one without the underscore. But some little girl has it.
How many followers
So
does
it
she
can't
have?
be not many.
Oh, well, we'll leave her alone.
Well,
Let's
you won
let's
this time.
let's
We
get
won't
her.
harass her.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said anything.
Speaking of which, there's only one Element 7 that I know of yet. Where can we find you?
TikTok _element7_. YouTube.com/element7s. Because someone took Element 7 and no one took Darth
These
Chocolate.
guys, man.
And Instagram and Element X style. I mean, I usually just take DMs in Instagram for like questions and stuff, but most of my content's on YouTube and TikTok. YouTube more for long form. I'm going to start a retrospective Darth Bane trilogy, chapter by chapter, so everyone can read with me. And I'm going to start live streaming more. Yeah. So tour along with Darth Choco if he's up for that. We're going to do a lot more games with viewers as well. We might start baby characters on a server that is with the viewers. So yeah.
Nice. Fun.
I mean, so we'll be doing that, but there's always room for a little MaceAhWindu.
Absolutely.
But
Right.
And
that being
Shaylee for
said-
Destiny.
yeah,
Gotta get a PC.
Shaylee for everything. So Josh, where can we find you and what you do?
So you guys can find me at MaceAhWindu. It's all one word now. TikTok, like blitzkrieged me one day. I woke up and they were like, I opened the app because I'm addicted to it at this point, and they were like, you need to change your username, and I was like, huh? And they were like, you can't. They were like, they made it cryptic. They were like, you can't use this anymore, and I was like, I'm sorry, do I have to let everybody know? And they were like, no, you just can't have like the periods in between the mace and the between like the window. And I was like, oh, so you just want me to make it one word? And I was praying to God. I was like, I swear to God, if I make this one word and somebody took it, I will pay that person to give it to. Like, dude, I got a brand now,
I'd be
bro.
nervous,
Come
yeah.
on, bro. But no, luckily everything worked out. Nobody ever puts an AH in between that too. But you can find me, MaceAhWindu, all one word. You can also find me on YouTube, also MaceAhWindu, all one word. And if you want to follow my personal Instagram, you can. It's j.avery97. My grandma, that's where my grandma knows me. So guys, please don't say nothing out of pocket. Twitter, you can also follow me on Twitter at MaceAhWindu. It's a little more politically charged over there. I'm a little mean over there, but if you guys are down for that kind of thing, I don't advertise it everywhere, but if you guys want that kind of thing, you can find me there.
I also have to say he's a little mean on YouTube when he's streaming Battlefront 2. But that's
Look, man.
Exposed.
Look, man. All I know is that game is still busted, and if you're gonna watch it, I want it to be entertaining. You know,
It is. It absolutely is. If you're not subscribed to everyone here on all their platforms, please do. These are among my favorite people. I like. Yeah, these they're all awesome. Inside of social media and outside. So don't ever feel bad supporting them, and they're just the best. But thank you guys, anyone that's joined me, for anyone that's still here. I love everyone here, and may the force be with you always.